Welcome to Waterford Wesleyan Church Online. I'm Pastor Paul, and I have the week off. Pastor Matt's going to share a message with you here in just a few moments. But that doesn't mean I don't have any responsibilities. So my responsibilities are announcements. I've got two quick ones. The first one is this. This Thursday, September 23rd at 6:30, we're going to gather at the church for a night of worship. And what that means is we're going to spend time reading God's Word, praying together, and worshiping God through music and blessing Him as He blesses us. It's just a great time to just be refreshed in the middle of the week. And in addition to that, connecting with other believers is just good for your soul and letting God bless you as you bless Him with worship. And the second quick announcement is about our growth groups. They're up and running, but I'll tell you what, it's not too late to join because we just got them off the ground, and I would encourage you to do so. And to sign up for one of those or to check them out a little bit more, go to waterfordwc.com, and there you will find all the information you need for our growth groups to get connected with other believers and learn a little bit more about what it means to follow Jesus. And so, with all of that done, here's Pastor Matt.
In one of my favorite movies, The Dead Poets Society, Robin Williams' character is a professor at an all-boys prep school, and his name is Mr. Keating. And he teaches English, specifically poetry, hence Dead Poets Society. And he quotes Walt Whitman in one of my favorite poems since seeing this movie. And Walt Whitman describes purpose. And the poem goes like this. O me, O life, of the question of these reoccurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, of myself forever reproaching myself, for who more foolish than I, and who more faithless? Of eyes that vainly crave the light of the objects mean, of the struggle ever renewed, of the poor results of all, of the plodding and sordid crowds I see around me, of the empty and useless years of the rest, with the rest me intertwined. The question, O me, so sad reoccurring, what does amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, that life exists and identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. The idea of contributing a verse is deeply biblical. We see it play out through the whole Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. And that's what I want to talk about today. What is your verse going to be? Now, when we contribute a verse to something, we are contributing to something. It's kind of redundant, but if you don't really think about it, it might slide right past you. We need to know where we've been and what we're a part of before we can contribute to something. Or else we're just a story floating out in the ether. And guess what? God has constructed a story that we can be a part of. Now, one of my favorite theologians, N.T. Wright, in his paper, How is the Bible Authoritative?, wants us to approach the Bible in a 5-act play. The first act is creation. The second is the fall. The third is Israel. The fourth is Jesus Christ. And the fifth is the church, us. And that's where I want to start. So as we can fully understand the story in which we, now the church, are a part of, we need to understand where we came from. So in Act 1, creation is where we're going to begin. God created the whole world and everything in it, and He called it good. And He created human beings. And in Genesis 1, verse 28 through 30, it reads this. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and on every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. And thus, the first verse of humanity was written. And notice what God did here. When as soon as He created human beings, He gave us purpose to subdue the earth in partnership with Him. Now, the word partnership is important here because God did not just simply drop humans here in the garden on earth and walk away. No, he wants to be in partnership with us. And we read later on that God walks in the cool of the garden with Adam and Eve. He's a part of this story. And he's physically a part of this story, at least in Eden, and will be throughout the rest of the Bible. But we get to Act 2, the fall, and everything changes. Now in Act 2, the fall, we get our villain, so to say. The serpent enters the scene, and it is the personification of sin and death. And if you know the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent tricks Adam and Eve into eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, in which God has told them not to eat. And for humanity's own good, God needs to kick Adam and Eve, humanity, out of the garden. But before he does that, he says this to the serpent. He says this, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers, and he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Now, in film and in plays, there's something called Chekhov's gun. And what that is it's a statement or it's an object that is present or presented in the first act, and it needs to go off or it needs to be fulfilled in the third act. So a good example that many of you may know is in the movie The Incredibles. Disney's The Incredibles. You got Mr. Incredible, Mrs. Incredible, Violet, Dash, and Jack Jack. It's the family of superheroes. Now, in the first act, we hear from Mrs. Incredible. She's describing to their costume maker, their super suit maker, Edna Mode, that Jack Jack doesn't have any powers. After Edna has made a suit that's like, it's bulletproof, it's fireproof, it can stretch to ridiculous levels. It's just an amazing suit. And Mrs. Incredible says, well, Jack Jack doesn't have any powers. And we learn in the third act that Jack Jack discovers his powers and defeats the bad guy. That's Chekhov's gun, being set up by the statement in the first act and going off in the third. What God said to the serpent is Chekhov's gun. So I just want you to put that in your head. Just pin that for a second, because that's going to come back in Act 4. But until then, we go into Act 3, Israel. Now, the promise that God made to Adam and Eve, to be in partnership with them and to help them flourish the earth, to subdue the earth in partnership with them, he makes the same promise to Abraham and to Sarah. It just sounds a little different. And this is what God says to Abraham and Sarah in Act 3. "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So, we see kind of the same promise being said to Abraham and Sarah. I am partnering with you, Abraham and Sarah, and your descendants, the Israelites. And it is through you I choose to bless the world. I am partnering with you to bless the world through you. Sounds an awful lot like Adam and Eve. But if you know the story of the Israelites, you understand that they mess up a lot. They worship sex, they worship money, they worship the golden ox, they worship, seems like, everything but God. They do really well, they fail. They do really well, they fail. Doesn't sound like a lot's changed between then and today. But God stays with them because God has something in mind. Remember, Chekhov's gun. But take this, that from the promise that God made to Adam and Eve to the promise that he made with Abraham and Sarah, the mission has never changed. And we'll see the completion of the mission in Act 4, Jesus Christ. Now, remember, Chekhov's gun. It has to go off. It has to go off. And off it goes. Remember, God said that he will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers, speaking to the serpent. Well, Eve's offspring is Jesus. And we read about that in the book of Matthew. Just go and read Matthew chapter 1. It's the whole genealogy leading up to Christ, from Adam and Eve to Christ. And guess what? Sin and death does bite Christ. He dies on the cross. But he defeats sin and death, and he raises himself from the grave, crushing the head of sin and death. Chekhov's gun goes off. And thus another verse in humanity is written. But I want us to pay special attention to something that pertains particularly to us, and it is John 3:16, and equally as important, John 3:17, when it says this: "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him." God chose Jesus to come and bless us so that we may have salvation in him and that we may continue on the blessings. The mission has never changed. God could have sent Jesus to condemn the world, to end the world. It would be that easy for God. He can do whatever he wants. But no, he chose to save the world because that was the mission from the start. Remember back with Adam and Eve, we were to subdue the world in partnership with him, to help it flourish. Jesus came to save the world. The mission never changed. Now, as we go into Act 5, the church, N.T. Wright refers to Act 5 as the unwritten fifth act of the church, meaning this: it's not done. We are a part of that mission. And remember when I talked about purpose, and we need to understand where we came from to understand our purpose so that we can contribute a verse, understanding our history, understanding the context in which we live? Well, here it is. Remember how the mission never changed? It still hasn't. So I want to ask you this: as you contribute your verse in this light, as you attend church, as you minister to your neighbors, as you go out into your community and spread the love of Christ to those around you, why are you doing it? Is it because you were raised this way? Do you come to church because your boyfriend or your girlfriend, your wife, or your husband, or maybe your parents have brought you and this is just what you do now? Is it because it's your culture? Do you grow up in a place where going to church is just a part of the gig? It's where you live, in the town in which you live. Or are you doing it because you understand that you are a part of something greater? That God so loved the earth, the world, that he wants you. And he sent his Son so that he can have you, so that you can do the things that he wants you to do, to be able to bless the earth, just like Adam and Eve, just like Abraham and Sarah, just like Christ, and now just like us. We need to understand that when we are contributing our verse in this life, we are a part of something greater. So I encourage you, take a moment this week, maybe right after you watch this video, or maybe tomorrow when this starts to settle in, take a moment and pray. Do I fully understand in my heart, not just in my head, but in my heart, that I am a part of something greater? That the biblical narrative that I read every day, I'm a part of that. That this isn't just something that I read so that I can feel good. This isn't just something that I can read to give me instructions about my day, but that I am deeply a part of this. And that the Old Testament is leading to Christ, and that I can rely on Christ. You're a part of this. I ask you, I encourage you to take a moment and to ask yourself, now that I know that I'm a part of this, how am I going to contribute my verse to be congruent with the thing that I now know?